Hey everyone, I'm going to show you how to make these tree topper crocheted angels. They're a little bit different than the ones I've made before that are smaller and the ones that look like this, because the wings on these aren't as flared. They're three-dimensional, but they're not as pointed as these. So I'll show you a little starter. These have a little bit more of a dramatic kind of snowflake look. And I actually used the snowflake pattern that I've done a tutorial for, and I modified it a bit to make this. So we're gonna do a two-part video. It's a little bit of a longer project. So this is the snowflake that I kind of played around and modified. You end up folding it in half and working into the bodice down this way. So you can kind of take any snowflake pattern that you really like and modify it. You want to make sure that it has two kind of symmetrical sides that you can fold down that will meet and be your bodice, but you can really play around with the design on the wings. And keep in mind, it doesn't have to lay flat. It can really curl up while you're working in the round because it's going to be folded over. So that actually adds to the flair, the less it lays flat while you're working in the round. So this is actually a different pattern. We're going to be making this and not these two bodices because I modified it a little bit more. So this one has a kind of thicker, it's all a solid bodice, whereas this one's a little bit more open, it's a little longer. So we're going to make this version right here. So we're going to start with a magic loop of 2 wraps because it creates a more secure, tighter cinch when you kind of pull it tight to knot it. And it's good if you're using a thicker yarn like a DK or worsted. So we're going to work into this circle. We're going to put in double crochets directly into the circle. So you want to do a starter double crochet. You can also look up videos for that, as well as the magic loop if you don't recognize them. Practice those a little bit and then come back. So we're going to put in little clusters of 3 double crochets, and they're going to be separated by 2 chain spaces. So I'm using a kind of lower end cheap white yarn, but I'm kind of spicing it up with this gold thread. It's a polyester nylon blend, so it's really strong. From like the nylon content, you can use it for embroidery, for sewing. It's pretty much a workhorse yarn, to be honest. It takes a lot to break it, and it's very thin, so I'm quadrupling it. I'm using 4 cones, and it's called Rexer. It's by Yeoman Yarns in the UK. I'll show you one of the cones. So it's, as you can see, Rexer Gold, Yeoman Yarns. You can look up that company and order from them. They're really good with customer service if you need to get in touch with them with questions. The only downside, there's shipping costs if you're getting it delivered outside the UK. So you do not need to use any specific yarn. You can use whatever white yarns you have on hand or different colors if you want to make a fun, colorful angel. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can make these in different colors. I think if you want to make a doll, if you wanted it as like a gift for a kid, more as a toy. I think if you did them in white, they'd also be cute as like little christening gifts. They kind of look like a little christening outfit. So you cinch this by pulling the tail thread. It's a little bit harder with these yarn, or the gold, but never mind. So we find whichever one got cinched more of those 2 initial loops, and you pull that from where it was kind of getting pulled. It's kind of hard to describe. I would recommend watching a tutorial in kind of slow motion. And then you cinch the other string and pull it from the tail. So we're going to go into this top loop of the first double crochet with a slip stitch to close that first round. So now we're going to work into these spaces that we made with those two crochet chain stitches. So you want to get over to that space by doing slip stitches across the tops of those double crochets till we slip into that first space. So I'll just show you how you do this little faux double crochet to start. You want to pinch the top loop. You pull it a little bit longer to the height that you want your double crochet. You pinch it on your hook so it really stays in place if you move it. You wrap the way you would do a double crochet, still pinch but kind of slide, and you do the motions of a double crochet. And this just looks a little bit neater when you're joining in the round. You don't see those initial chained double crochets. So now in this loop, we're going to be putting 5 double crochets separated by a single space of a chain. I call spaces and chains kind of interchangeably, but if you hear me say one, it's the same thing. So it's a little bit more of a fanned out look. You can really see the individual 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 doubles. So we're going to be putting a single crochet in between those clusters and work into that next space. If you hear that noise, that is the cone that has fallen over. I recommend putting them on like a little stand or something, but ideally, if you pull off the top, they kind of unravel a bit easier. I'm not sure what you would use as a stand. You don't like prongs to kind of keep them up. Probably make it or buy it. So that's how that's starting to look. You do your one space in between each cluster, and then in the cluster you do a double, a space, a double, a space, double, a space. So you have 5. So this is the second round. If you're starting to play around with the design, or if you want to do that, I would actually wait. This is a good kind of just base. You can kind of play around with the design more on the wings, and add your own unique pattern there, because you're basically just kind of creating the bodice at this point. There's not really a need to veer from the course just yet, because it's pretty simple. So you want to make sure you do like a symmetrical pattern, that like with the 6 motif kind of clusters, you have 2 and 2 for the wings, and then directly opposite each other you have the 2 bodice spaces. So yeah, you want to make sure you have an even number for sake of symmetry. And it's also, you can kind of see starting to flare right now. It's not going to lie flat, but that's fine. The more curl, the more it's just going to naturally flare up for the wings, which is what we're going for. So you can kind of see it's already, basically it means it's just like not a perfect uniform increase. Like if you're building out any circular motif, you want it to increase on each row to kind of keep it growing, but in this case we're not going to make it flat. It's going to be kind of like a hyper circle where it's starting to gain a dimension, a 3rd dimension. All right, so now we're going to be working in between each of the spaces of the double crochets. So you want to anchor in between with a slip stitch. You always do that whenever you're working into a space. You always want to make sure you anchor into that space first and not work off of that last stitch beforehand. We are going to put 2 double crochets into each space. Just directly go into that where you would have that 1 chain space from the last round. Here we're gonna double crochet, or sorry, not double crochet, 2 chains to separate these clusters. Uno, due. So 2 double crochets go into each of the 4 spaces, which means you're gonna have 8 total double crochets for this cluster in the 3rd round. 2 spacers, and then just work directly in there. So that's how it's starting to look. For starching, you can use Mod Podge or glue. I don't really love how that looks. It's very stiff, kind of like crafty kitty, I don't know. If you like it, it's good for really kind of holding the shape. It's very stiff. You can use it to really just like stand the angel up on its own if you want to have it as kind of like a little figurine around the house. But if you're gonna use it as like a tree topper, you don't need it that stiff. You can use, I've used hairspray. If you kind of saturate the inside of the skirt and then the outside, it will smell like a hair salon, but that's okay. It's better than some other noxious fumes that you could potentially have. I've also done starch that's like, you know, ironing starch to spray on. That was not very stiff either. I did a couple coats of that. You'd iron, spray, iron, or steam. So I have yet to have a good recommendation for what to use. The hairspray kind of like accentuates the fuzz on the yarn, so you really want to like pat it to get it to like sink in. So I would recommend using like gloves or some other towel, so you don't have that, you know, directly on your skin. You can add cute little bows. I'll show you in the next part, but we basically have this little channel that you can weave in and out the ribbon if you want to really integrate it into the project, as you can see here, or you can just do it on the outside. I like the satin look. This is a grosgrain ribbon. I think velvet looks really good too. Very Christmassy, or just as a doll. Every doll could use a little bow. So yeah, I encourage you to just experiment with any of your favorite kind of snowflake or circular motifs. You can definitely customize this, and if you make multiple, it's really fun to change up the skirt pattern to make a unique object every time and not the same thing over and over again if you make them as gifts or decorations. So you're going to join in the round to finish this row, and what you do is, it's kind of harder when you have this kind of faux double crochet to start, but you slip into the first stitch, and then for this next row we're going to be starting our bodice. So we have our 6 motifs. Good, make sure you have the right amount. You want to fold it in half. These 2 you can see are going to be the bodice. These 2 are the wings, this one and this one. Sorry, this one and this one. These 2 are the wings. So you want to leave the bodice blank. So what we're going to do, I've kind of cheated. I've slipped into the space because I couldn't get it into the top of this double, which is a problem about these little faux doubles. So we're going to start by doing a chain 1. And we're going to go back into this space and do a single, just so we make sure that we have all of our stitches getting a single crochet, because I kind of cheated on that first one. But basically you just single crochet into each of these little guys. So this is going to be the bodice. We're going to keep it short with this single row. You're going to slip with a chain and anchor into your space. Always anchor. Now I know that was not a good example, but we're going to do a false double crochet on the top. And what we're going to do is, I think you can see it here, there's this little motif here. We're gonna work that. What you do is we're gonna put little picots of chain 3s, and then you anchor it into the top of that stitch. So you do a double crochet, and then from the top part of the double crochet, we put 3 chains. You anchor into the top of the double to create a little picot. So you double crochet, 1, 2, 3, and then you find right here, there's a little bar that you slip into. And we're gonna do 5 of these. So we have 4, that's how it's starting to look. 5. You can modify this, you can do less or more. These are double. So then you chain 2, you go back into that space and anchor again to finish off. And that is our motif. Good job. Next, we're gonna be starting these little things. So we're gonna basically create this little loop thing where they go into. So we're gonna slip 1, 2, and we're going to do a chain of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we're going to slip into that next space on top of the double crochet. We're going to slip 1, 2, 3, chain 6, and then you slip into that next stitch, and then you slip until you get back into that center space. You do your starter double crochet, and you do your picots. So double crochet, chain 3, anchor. You want to go into the 2 bars that are here. It's kind of hard to see, but once you're doing it, you'll start to kind of feel it out. It's better if you have an example in front of you that you're able to kind of look at. It's 1, 2. So you kind of come in from the top, and then it's kind of the next stitch your needle runs into those 2, and that anchors it securely on the top. So then this chain 2 and then the slip stitch back into this space just anchors the motif. So it's kind of freestanding. It's not connecting higher up. We slip 1, 2, then we do a chain 6, 2, 4, 6. We slip into the next stitch, the next stitch, and the next stitch. So you have kind of 3 separating in the middle. You anchor, slip, and then slip into the center. Always slip into the center. So for that first faux double crochet, you really want to keep it loose, I guess, on the top, so you leave a space that's easily kind of looped through when you're doing the picot. I mean, it's something that you really have to just feel out. Like once you've done a bunch of them, you can kind of see how you can control the tension of the top 2 loops by how you kind of pinch and how you wrap. So it's more of a matter of doing it a couple times. If you haven't mastered that, I would recommend doing that in order to have an easier time with this pattern. So you slip 2, oh, sorry, getting ahead of myself. All right, so we don't want to work any of those loops into this because this is is our bodice piece for the back. So we've slipped into this loop that we worked our little motif into, this little picoed one. But now we're gonna do, a chain. Wow, I can't talk. A chain one, and then we're gonna do single crochets across this row. So the bodice, we don't want it growing as fast. We want it a little bit shorter. We want the wings to grow a lot, so it has this look where it's really flared, but a little bit shorter on the bodice. I think that looks best. This one is a little bit longer. It also has the open work of the lace, which I don't really love, but it depends on what you like. So yeah. So we've gotten to the other side. Good. Now we are going to do the same motif here, double crochet. So I'll try to go a little bit slower so you can see. You wrap and you do the motions of a double, but you kind of want this spot to be a little bit bigger, a little poofed out, because it makes it easier to go back through for your picot. You kind of stretch it out on the needle a little bit when you are doing the wrap. You kind of want there to be a little bit more space laterally. I don't know how you would describe it on the needle. I'll show it again on the next time I do it. But yeah, you can put like more of these. You can do like 6. You can completely change the motif. You can put something else in this space to really change up the design. You can put more of these things. You can put 3 if you kind of space them out a little bit less. If you put like like 1 spacer maybe in between instead of 2 and 3. You might need to do single crochets into the loops instead of I do doubles, so they're less fat. Yeah, those are just some ideas. All right, so we are getting close to the end of this. We have done, I'm trying to show you, it's kind of hard to get it to be flat, doesn't want to lay flat. This is our bodice, this is our bodice. We got 1 more of these dudes. All right, so for this, you wrap, but you're kind of leaving space in between them here. So like that, because that really, like it creates more of a bigger stitch here, if that makes sense. You can see this loop is bigger. That's the goal. So the next round is when we do the filling in of these, and that's our last round for the wing. And then we fold it over and connect in the round to create the body of the angel. So we have 1, 2, 3, this is our 4th row. So it takes 5 rows to just do the top. These are great little Christmas gifts if you have friends